The wedding ring hit the restaurant table with a sharp clink, spinning 3 times before settling next to my untouched Caesar salad. Marissa Grant, my girlfriend of 4 years, stared at the diamond like it was a spider that had crawled out of my pocket. My career comes first, Tom. I'll always choose ambition over comfort. That was 12 years ago. Sitting in my car outside Lena's downtown office building in 2024, I could still hear those words echoing in my head. The ring had cost me 3 months' salary back then, a junior IT guy's desperate attempt to lock down the most ambitious woman in Seattle's tech scene. Guess the ring was too small, I muttered to myself, watching the glass doors of the Morrison building. Or maybe my future wasn't stock optioned enough. My phone buzzed. Lena. Running 5 minutes late. Client call went long. Love you. I smiled despite myself. Lena Martinez, my wife of 3 years, was everything Marissa wasn't. Warm where Marissa was calculating, supportive where Marissa was competitive, and most importantly, she'd said yes when I proposed. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now the head of cybersecurity for Feldman Tech Solutions, pulling down 6 figures with stock options that would make 2012 me weep with joy. The blue-collar kid from Tacoma had made it. Too bad Marissa wasn't around to see it, or so I thought. Tom? Tom Jensen? I looked up from my phone to see a figure approaching my BMW. Designer heels clicked against wet pavement, and that voice... Christ, that voice still had the power to make my stomach drop. Marissa Grant stood beside my car, looking every inch the successful executive she'd always dreamed of becoming. Her auburn hair was shorter now, styled in that severe bob that screamed corner office. The tailored black suit probably cost more than my first car, but something was different about her eyes. They looked haunted. I rolled down the window. Marissa, it's been what, 5 years? 6, actually. She glanced around the parking garage nervously. I heard you work for Feldman now. Congratulations. Thanks. I heard you made VP at TechStorm Industries. Guess ambition paid off. A flicker of something, pain, regret, crossed her face. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Every instinct told me to drive away. Lena would be down any moment, and the last thing I needed was my wife meeting my ex-girlfriend in a parking garage. But curiosity got the better of me. What about? Marissa leaned closer to the window. Her perfume was different now. Expensive, but cold, like everything else about her. You never really knew what happened, did you? She said quietly. After I said no. After you walked away. Before I could respond, she was gone, clicking back toward the elevator bank. I sat there for a full minute, heart pounding, until Lena's knock on the passenger window snapped me back to reality. Hey, stranger. Lena slid into the car, bringing the scent of her vanilla perfume and the warmth of her smile. Sorry about the wait. Who was that woman you were talking to? Nobody important, I lied, pulling out of the parking space. Just someone from my old job. But as we drove home to our suburban house in Bellevue, Marissa's words echoed in my mind. You never really knew what happened. What the hell was that supposed to mean? 3 days later, I found out. I was grabbing coffee from the break room at Feldman Tech when I overheard Candace Williams and Julie Park, 2 women I recognized from TechStorm's marketing department, gossiping near the elevator. I still can't believe Marissa is single again, Candace was saying, after all that drama with Scotty. Please, Julie snorted. That whole thing was a disaster waiting to happen. You can't sleep with your colleague for 3 years and expect it to stay quiet. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. 3 years? Candace lowered her voice. I thought it was just since her engagement ended. Oh, honey, no. Marissa and Scott Rourke have been hooking up since 2013, maybe earlier. Remember that conference in Portland where they disappeared for 2 hours during the keynote? 2013, the year after Marissa rejected my proposal. But wasn't she engaged to that other guy, the accountant from Bellevue? David Morrison. Yeah, she was with him for 2 years while screwing Scotty on the side. And before that, there was that IT guy. What was his name? Tom something? My blood turned to ice. Poor bastard probably never knew what hit him, Julie continued. Marissa's always been good at keeping her options open. Remember what she used to say? Never put all your eggs in one basket, especially if the basket doesn't come with stock options. They laughed and walked away, leaving me standing there with cold coffee and a head full of rage. Scott Rourke. I knew that name. Old money Seattle family, drove vintage Porsches, and had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no in his entire privileged life. If Marissa had been sleeping with him since 2013, Bet her NDA doesn't cover this kind of leak, I muttered, dumping my coffee in the sink. That evening, I sat in my home office staring at my laptop screen. Lena was at her book club, which gave me time to think. And the more I thought, the angrier I got. Marissa hadn't rejected me because of her career. She'd rejected me because she was already sleeping with Scott Rourke, a guy with family money and connections that a blue-collar IT worker could never match. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sorry about the other day. Didn't mean to ambush you. Can we talk? There are things you should know. M. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, What things? The response came quickly. Meet me at Cafe Luna tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. I should have deleted the message. Should have blocked the number. Should have told Lena everything and let sleeping dogs lie, as she always said. Instead, I typed, Fine, but this better be worth my time. The next afternoon, I found Marissa in a corner booth at Cafe Luna, nursing what looked like her third espresso. She'd traded the power suit for jeans and a sweater, but she still looked like she hadn't slept in days. You came, she said as I sat down. You said there were things I should know, so talk. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a folder labeled TJ Project, filled with documents, photos, and what looked like surveillance notes. What the hell is this? Insurance, she said quietly. I've been keeping tabs on you since 2012. Your job history, your marriage, your wife's career, everything. I scrolled through the files, my anger building with each click. Photos of me and Lena at restaurants, copies of my employment records, screenshots of Lena's LinkedIn profile with notes about her weaknesses and pressure points. You're insane. I'm thorough. Marissa leaned forward. Tom, I made a mistake 12 years ago, a big one, and I've been trying to figure out how to fix it ever since. By stalking me and my wife? By understanding what I lost. Her voice cracked slightly. Scott was supposed to be temporary, a way to climb the ladder faster. But then you disappeared, and by the time I realized what I'd given up, you were already with her. I closed the laptop and pushed it back across the table. So, what do you want, Marissa? An apology? Forgiveness? Because I'm fresh out of both. I want another chance. The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. I stared at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. Are you out of your mind? I'm married, happily married. Are you? She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. Because according to your wife's best friend Sarah, there are some cracks in paradise. The messages were from Sarah Chen, Lena's college roommate and maid of honor. Screenshots of conversations where Lena complained about my long work hours, my occasional moodiness, my obsession with security systems. How did you get these? Sarah works in marketing at TechStorm. We're friendly. Marissa's smile was cold. The point is, your marriage isn't as solid as you think, and I'm prepared to offer you something better. Which is what, exactly? Everything you wanted 12 years ago. Partnership? Ambition? Power. She leaned closer. I'm being promoted to Senior VP next month. I'll have budget authority, hiring power, the works. I could bring you over to TechStorm as Chief Security Officer, double your current salary. In exchange for what? Leave her. Come back to me. We can build something real this time. I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. You're completely delusional if you think I'd leave Lena for you, especially after learning what you really are. Marissa's expression hardened. What I really am. I'm successful, Tom. I'm powerful. I'm everything you used to want. You're a cheater and a manipulator, and apparently a stalker, too. I threw a $5 bill on the table. Stay away from me and my wife. Or what? I leaned down until we were eye to eye. Or you'll find out exactly what this blue-collar IT guy learned in 12 years of cybersecurity work. I walked away, leaving her sitting there with her laptop full of schemes and her espresso gone cold. But as I drove home, one thought kept nagging at me. If Marissa had all this information about my life, what else was she planning to do with it? I found out 2 days later when Lena came home from work in tears. They're restructuring my department, she said, collapsing onto our couch. My boss called me in today and said they're eliminating my position. I have 2 weeks. What? But you just got promoted 6 months ago. I know. It doesn't make sense. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Jennifer said it came from corporate. Some consultant recommended cutting redundant marketing positions. A cold suspicion crept up my spine. What consultant? I don't know. Some firm called Strategic Solutions Group. I grabbed my laptop and ran a quick search. Strategic Solutions Group was a shell company registered 3 months ago. The owner was listed as M. Grant Consulting. That witch? I muttered. What? Nothing. Just let me make some calls. I might be able to help. But even as I said it, I knew Marissa had played this perfectly. Lena's company would never admit they'd been manipulated by a competitor, and proving the connection would be nearly impossible. I spent the next hour pacing our living room, my mind racing. Marissa had declared war, and she'd fired the first shot at my wife. The old me, the guy who walked away 12 years ago, would have taken it lying down. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I went out to the garage and set up what Lena would later call my revenge whiteboard, a large dry erase board where I mapped out everything I knew about Marissa Grant and Scott Rourke. Step 1. Don't get arrested, I wrote at the top. Step 2. Make them wish I had. Over the next 3 days, I used every tool in my cybersecurity arsenal to investigate my targets. Nothing illegal, just good old-fashioned social engineering and public record searches. What I found was a goldmine. Marissa and Scott's affair wasn't just ongoing, it was documented. Hotel receipts charged to company accounts, conference room reservations that coincided with their meetings, even a few photos from Scott's social media that showed them together at events where they claimed to be networking separately. But the real prize was Scott's car club. The Pacific Northwest Classic Car Society was Scott's baby, a group of wealthy enthusiasts who met monthly to show off their vintage vehicles and make business deals. What they didn't know was that Scott had been using the club's encrypted messaging app to share insider trading information with select members. Not quite illegal, but definitely against SEC regulations and company policy. I spent Tuesday evening in my garage, working on a little project. Wednesday morning, I called in sick and drove to the Bellevue Country Club where the car club was having their monthly meet. Scott's pride and joy was a 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS, a car worth more than most people's houses. He'd parked it in the center of the lot, surrounded by other classics, and was holding court with a group of admirers. I waited until he went inside for lunch, then executed my plan. The device I'd built was simple, a Bluetooth speaker small enough to hide under the car's chassis, connected to my phone and loaded with audio files I'd extracted from Marissa's voicemails. The same voicemails she'd been leaving Scott for months, detailing their affair and her plans to manipulate various business deals. At 2 p.m., just as Scott was giving a presentation about integrity in business relationships, I triggered the device. Marissa's voice echoed across the parking lot at full volume. "Scotty, baby, I can't wait to feel you inside me again. Meet me at the Westin tonight, room 1247, and bring those quarterly reports. I need to know which stocks to short before the announcement." The crowd fell silent. Scott's face went from confident to mortified to rage red in about 3 seconds. "And remember," Marissa's recorded voice continued, "if anyone asks about the Pacific Northwest thing, we've never discussed individual investments. The SEC doesn't need to know about our little arrangement." Scott ran toward his car, frantically trying to locate the source of the audio, but I'd hidden the speaker too well. The recording played for another 2 minutes, detailing their intimate encounters and business schemes in explicit detail. By the time Scott found and destroyed the device, half the club was filming with their phones. The other half was already calling their lawyers. I drove home with a smile on my face. Red pairs well with betrayal, I said to myself, remembering the wine Scott had spilled on his shirt in his panic. But I was just getting started. That evening, I created a fake LinkedIn profile for a headhunter and reached out to Marissa about a confidential opportunity at a major tech firm. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at Lena's office building. I'd already spoken to Marcus, the building's security guard, who owed me a favor from when I'd helped recover his daughter's stolen laptop. Marcus was more than happy to let me borrow the conference room's recording equipment. Friday came, and Marissa showed up dressed to kill, clearly expecting to meet with a potential employer. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with Lena. "I'm sorry," Lena said, looking confused. "I think there's been a mistake. This is my office." "Your office?" Marissa's composure slipped for just a moment. "You're Tom Jensen's wife." "Yes, and you are. Someone who's going to make your life very difficult if you don't convince your husband to be reasonable." The threat was clear, and Lena's expression hardened. "Excuse me? Tom has something I want, and I'm prepared to destroy your career, your marriage, and your pathetic little suburban life to get it." Every word was captured in crystal-clear digital audio, thanks to the recording system I'd activated remotely. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lena said, "but I think you should leave." "Oh, I'll leave. But not before you understand the situation. Your husband used to be mine, and he's going to be mine again, whether you like it or not." Marissa turned and walked out, leaving Lena shaken but unharmed. More importantly, leaving me with a recording that would end Marissa's career if it reached the right people. Which it did about an hour later when I anonymously sent copies to TechStorm's board of directors, HR department, and legal team. By Monday morning, Marissa Grant was suspended pending a full investigation into her unprofessional conduct and potential harassment of competitors' employees. I should have felt satisfied, should have called it even, and moved on with my life. But then Scott Rourke decided to escalate things. The fake HR complaint arrived at Feldman Tech on Tuesday morning. According to the documents, I had allegedly hacked into TechStorm systems, stolen proprietary information, and used it to harass their employees. The evidence was fabricated, but it was good, professional, the kind of thing that would take weeks to disprove, and by then, my reputation would be destroyed. "I'm sorry, Tom," Mr. Feldman said as security escorted me to the parking lot. "Until we can sort this out, you're suspended without pay." At least I got to keep the stapler, I muttered, carrying my box of personal items to my car. But losing my job was just the beginning. Over the next week, Scott and Marissa launched a coordinated attack on every aspect of my life. My professional references started getting calls about security concerns regarding my character. Our neighbors received anonymous letters claiming I was under investigation for corporate espionage. Even our local bank got a tip that I might be involved in money laundering. None of it was true, but the damage was real. Lena lost 2 freelance clients who didn't want to be associated with potential criminal activity. Our mortgage broker called to reassess our refinancing application. Even our dog groomer started acting weird around us. "They're trying to destroy us," Lena said one evening as we sat in our living room, surrounded by legal documents and printouts of the various accusations against me. "I know, and I'm going to stop them." "How?" "We can't afford a lawyer, you don't have a job, and they seem to have unlimited resources." She was right, of course. In a straight fight, Scott's family money and Marissa's corporate connections would crush us. But I didn't plan on fighting fair. I spent Wednesday morning setting up a new social media account using one of Scott's car club buddies' names. Then I started posting screenshots of the insider trading messages I'd captured from the club's app, along with photos of Scott and Marissa together at various business events. By afternoon, Chunker Porschegate was trending on local Twitter, and the Seattle Times business reporter was asking questions about alleged improprieties in the Pacific Northwest Classic Car Society. Thursday evening, I put Phase 2 into action. The Morrison Hotel's annual charity gala was the kind of event where Seattle's tech elite went to see and be seen. $500 a plate, black tie required, and enough social media coverage to make or break reputations. I knew Scott would be there. He was on the planning committee. What he didn't know was that I'd volunteered to help with the event's technical support, which gave me access to the venue's audio-visual system. Lena and I arrived fashionably late, blending in with the crowd of executives and socialites. I'd borrowed a tuxedo from my brother-in-law, and Lena looked stunning in a black dress we'd bought for our anniversary. "There he is," Lena whispered, nodding toward the bar where Scott was holding court with a group of investors. Scott looked every inch the successful playboy in his custom tuxedo, regaling his audience with stories about his latest business acquisitions. His wife, Patricia, a thin blonde with empty eyes and a trust fund, stood beside him like an expensive accessory. "Showtime," I murmured. I made my way to the technical booth and accessed the presentation system. With a few keystrokes, I loaded the audio files I'd prepared, a greatest hits collection of Scott's insider trading discussions and intimate encounters with Marissa. Then I waited for the perfect moment. It came during the silent auction, when Scott stepped up to the microphone to introduce the evening's keynote speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scott began, "it's my pleasure to welcome—" His words were cut off, as his own voice filled the ballroom through the sound system. "Marissa, baby, I've got the quarterly projections for Zentech. If we short their stock now and leak the revenue miss to our contacts at the Journal, we can make a fortune." The crowd went silent. Scott's face turned white, then red, then purple. "Patricia, I can explain," he started to say. But the recording wasn't finished. "God, you feel so good. Patricia hasn't touched me in months, but you make me feel alive again." Patricia Rourke's champagne glass hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the silent ballroom. She stared at her husband with the kind of cold fury that only comes from years of suppressed rage finally finding an outlet. "You bastard," she said quietly. Then she grabbed the microphone from Scott's hand and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce that my husband is a lying, cheating piece of garbage who's been embezzling from his clients and sleeping with his business partner. The lawyers will be in touch." She walked out, leaving Scott standing alone on the stage while 400 of Seattle's most influential people stared at him in stunned silence. I couldn't resist one final touch. As Scott stumbled off the stage, I triggered the building's fire sprinkler system directly above him. Just enough water to soak his custom tuxedo and complete his humiliation. Red pairs well with betrayal, I said to Lena as we watched Scott flee the ballroom, dripping wet and alone. But our victory celebration was short-lived. The next morning, I woke up to find my car vandalized and a threatening note taped to our front door. "This isn't over. You have 24 hours to back off, or your wife pays the price." It was signed with Marissa's initials. "That's it," I said, showing the note to Lena. "No more games. It's time to end this." The plan came to me while I was installing our new security system. If Marissa wanted to threaten my wife, I'd give her the opportunity. On my terms, with cameras rolling and the whole world watching. I spent Friday setting the trap. First, I created a fake press release announcing a major product launch by a new startup called Jensen Security Solutions. The event would be held at the Westin Hotel's conference center on Saturday afternoon, with revolutionary new technology that would change the cybersecurity landscape forever. Then I sent personal invitations to every tech reporter in Seattle, along with select members of both TechStorm's board of directors and the Pacific Northwest Classic Car Society. Finally, I leaked the location to Scott through a mutual contact, along with a message. "Tom Jensen is launching a competing security firm with stolen TechStorm data. Thought you should know." Saturday morning, I put the final pieces in place. Our house was now equipped with motion sensors, security cameras, and a public address system that could broadcast to the entire neighborhood. I'd also tipped off our local news station about potential criminal activity at our address. Lena was safely at her sister's house in Portland, despite her protests that she wanted to stay and fight. "This needs to end," I'd told her, "and it needs to end publicly so they can never come after us again." At 2 p.m., I was in the hotel conference room, watching as reporters and tech executives filed in for my fake product launch. The room was packed. Apparently the promise of industrial espionage drama was irresistible to the local media. At 2:15, my phone buzzed with a text from our home security system. "Motion detected at front door." Perfect timing. I stepped up to the podium and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Before we begin, I'd like to address some recent allegations about my character and business practices." The main screen lit up with a presentation titled "The Real Story: How Marissa Grant and Scott Rourke Tried to Destroy My Life." What followed was a methodical, documented breakdown of everything that had happened over the past month. The stalking, the manipulation, the fake HR complaint, the harassment of my wife, the insider trading, the adultery, all of it backed up with recordings, screenshots, and public records. "As you can see," I continued, "this isn't about business competition. It's about two people who couldn't accept that their actions have consequences." In the audience, I could see TechStorm's CEO frantically taking notes while the Seattle Times reporter live-tweeted the entire presentation. At 2:45, my phone buzzed again. "Multiple motion alerts, vandalism in progress." "And now," I said to the audience, "I'd like to show you what's happening at my house right now." The screen switched to a live feed from our security cameras. Marissa and Scott were in our driveway, spray painting obscenities on my car while someone, I couldn't see who, threw rocks at our windows. The crowd gasped. Several people started recording with their phones. As you can see, even as I speak to you here, these individuals are committing crimes against my property and threatening my family. On screen, Marissa looked directly at one of the cameras and shouted, "You want to play games, Tom? Let's see how you like it when your precious wife has an accident." That was the moment I triggered the house's defense system. Every sprinkler in the yard activated simultaneously, soaking the three intruders. The motion sensor lights began flashing in a strobing pattern, and the public address system, audible throughout the neighborhood, began broadcasting at maximum volume. "Attention residents, you are witnessing Seattle's most eligible homewreckers in their natural habitat. Please take photos and share on social media using the hashtag #SeattleScumbags. The effect was immediate and devastating. Neighbors poured out of their houses with cameras and phones. A news van that had been tipped off earlier pulled up just as Marissa and Scott tried to flee, only to find their car blocked in by curious onlookers. But I wasn't done yet. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the conference room, "I'd like to invite my former girlfriend to join us here at the hotel. She seems to have something she'd like to say." 20 minutes later, hotel security escorted a dripping wet, furious Marissa Grant into the conference room. Scott had managed to escape in the chaos, but Marissa had been cornered by reporters and practically dragged to the hotel. She snarled as she stormed up to the podium. "You think you're so smart? You think you've won?" "I think I've exposed you for what you really are," I replied calmly. The room was silent, every phone camera focused on us. "What I really am." Marissa's composure finally cracked completely. "I'm everything you ever wanted and were too much of a coward to fight for. I'm successful. I'm powerful. I'm..." You're a pathetic, manipulative narcissist who can't accept that someone chose happiness over ambition, I interrupted, and you're about to be unemployed. Marissa's eyes filled with tears of rage. This isn't over, Tom. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy your marriage. You'll do nothing, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Patricia Rourke walking down the aisle, flanked by two men in expensive suits. Mrs. Rourke, I said, I didn't expect to see you here. I came to thank you, she replied, and to deliver some news. Ms. Grant, you're being served with a lawsuit for alienation of affection, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The damages we're seeking total $12 million. Marissa went white. You can't. I can, and I am. My husband may be a cheating scumbag, but he's my cheating scumbag, and you're going to pay for destroying my marriage. Patricia smiled coldly. I've also taken the liberty of sharing all the evidence Mr. Jensen provided with the SEC, the IRS, and the FBI. Something about insider trading and wire fraud. The reporters were having a field day. Camera flashes filled the room as Marissa stood there, dripping and defeated, realizing that her world was crumbling around her. But wait, I said, stepping back to the microphone. There's more. The screen lit up with a final presentation slide. Marissa Grant's Greatest Hits, a compilation. What followed was a 10-minute montage of every terrible thing Marissa had said or done over the past month, set to upbeat music and edited like a comedy reel. Her threats against Lena, her admission of stalking me for years, her plans to manipulate my career and destroy my marriage, even her pathetic attempt at seduction during our coffee meeting. By the time it was over, the entire room was laughing. Marissa Grant, once the most feared executive in Seattle's tech scene, had become a punchline. She tried to run, but the reporters followed her out, shouting questions about insider trading and harassment charges. The last I saw of her was a shaky cell phone video of her hiding in a hotel bathroom stall while a female reporter asked through the door if she had any comment about her impending criminal charges. As for Scott, he fared even worse. Patricia's divorce lawyers had frozen all his assets. The SEC had opened a formal investigation, and his beloved Porsche had been impounded as evidence in the insider trading case. The last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Renton and working at a used car lot. 6 months later, Lena and I were sitting on our deck, watching the sunset over Lake Washington. She'd found a better job with a marketing firm that appreciated her skills, and I'd started my own cybersecurity consulting company. Business was booming. Apparently, publicly humiliating corporate criminals was great for your reputation in the security world. Do you ever regret it? Lena asked, curled up next to me on the porch swing. Going after them like that? I thought about it for a moment. Nope. They declared war on our family. I just finished it. Remind me never to get on your bad side, she said with a laugh. Don't worry, you're stuck with me forever. Good, she said, kissing my cheek. I like happy endings. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, I smiled and pulled my wife closer. 12 years ago, Marissa Grant had rejected my proposal because she thought she could do better. She'd chosen ambition over love, manipulation over honesty, power over happiness. In the end, she got exactly what she deserved. Nothing. And I got everything I'd ever wanted. A woman who loved me for who I was, not what I could give her. Guess ambition really did come first, and last.